Hello and welcome to my show, Nutrition for Health, Perfect Weight and Wellbeing on UK Health Radio, your global feel-good radio. I'm Dora Walsh. I've been working in the field of natural and functional medicine for over 15 years. I'm a qualified advanced nutritionist and nutritional therapist, and I support my clients to overcome their chronic health concerns like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, digestive problems, autoimmune conditions, skin concerns, and more. You can find out more about me on my website, nutriheal.net, and also follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Now, this week, we're going to be talking about how safe is your water supply? And there's a big question mark on that. A lot of people worrying about fluoridation or heavy metals in their water, whether the water is affecting their health, and not really knowing what's in it and whether it really is healthy and safe for them. Water is so essential for our health, and there are so many benefits. We all know what it feels like to be dehydrated, but we need to remember that we have to have enough water throughout the day. If we don't have it, it will lead to death within a few days. Water keeps our normal body temperature. It lubricates and cushions our joints. It also helps us to get rid of waste through urination, perspiration, and bowel movements, which is really important. There's so much that it does to support our health. But most importantly, it's not enough just to get water in your body. We need to make sure that that water really does hydrate us properly. And we need to make sure that it is the healthiest and best water possible. This week, I've got an expert with me here to talk about that topic. How safe is your water supply, and how can we make sure we get the best water possible? There's so many things we're going to be covering today, and I really hope you benefit from the show. I've got Roddy MacDonald here on the show, founder and the managing director of Water for Health Limited. And you can find out more about him on his website, water-for-health.co.uk. And you can also follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just type in Water for Health. Hi, Roddy. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Dora. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm delighted to be here. So hopefully we can share something that's of value to your listeners.
I think this is a really important topic at the moment because there is a concern about our water supply. There always has been for people that are health conscious, and even people that aren't so much into health. They can tell the difference in taste of their water. They might not even like the taste and not realizing there's something in that means it isn't healthy. And we're going to be talking about all of these topics. Can you tell us a bit about how you came to be an expert in this area of water and set up your company, Water for Health?
Okay, sure. I'll try and take you a little bit in my journey. But first, I would like to qualify the definition of or the category of expert, because yes, I've learned a little bit over the years as we go along, but I think most people in this field as regards water is concerned, the more we get to know, the more we realize how little we probably do know. And people think that water, H2O, is a simple compound. There's not much to learn about it, but I think we're finding that's not quite accurate. Anyway, taking me back to the journey, I'm been in the natural health field now for the last 15 years. But like many, I've come the journey trying to sort my own health out and then look at solutions, and eventually became so involved in it that I decided to make a career move 15 years ago. In my 20s and 30s, I suffered regular infections, and eventually my health broke down, and I had chronic fatigue for a number of years, or ME as it's labeled. And I went the conventional route to begin with. Didn't really do much for me. And then I started pursuing different things on the natural health route. And I struggled. It was over the years for probably about 8-9 years till I came across it was a doctor that was using Vega testing, and he did some testing and he made some observations of the mind-body connection, suggested I read certain books. And I think that's what really sparked my interest in the whole subject. And since 1990, I've been reading extensively in natural health and in the water. At that time, I became involved in the environmental industry, and in that, I was primarily involved in the industrial wastewater treatment. I was not involved in the drinking water side. I was involved in the disposal of effluents from industrial companies. But it gave me a further understanding of water. But probably in the early 90s, somebody gave me a copy of a book, Living Water by Schauberger, which was, again, very enlightening. And I've got now several of books pertaining to his work and others, other fields, in terms of looking at what is healthy water and what we have done to damage the water that we are actually flowing through our taps. But going back to the other point, that is the water that is coming through our taps safe? Let me make quite clear that the water, I think throughout the country, the vast majority, if not of the time, meets the set standards in terms of water quality. And that there are certain things that should be looked at which are not helpful to us. For instance, we might have very low levels of certain toxins, heavy metals, or other pollutants in the water. And they individually might be deemed to be at safe levels, although in many cases we don't know what an exact safe level is. But what we don't know is what the cocktail of different things does for us. And we have the issue of toxins that's picked up in the environment and finds its way into the water supplies, as well as what they use in the water treatment to try and maintain a certain water quality and also to stop the potential of pathogens causing harm. And one of the principal ones that affects the taste is chlorine that's added to the water supply as a disinfectant. And the levels of that seem to vary a lot throughout the country. But that's added on a continuous basis. And when you have not been drinking chlorinated water for a while and then go back and take a taste of it, you really find it very distasteful. Maybe not conscious of it so much when you're drinking it regularly. However, although chlorine appears to be necessary for disinfection, what it in itself can have effects on our health, and particularly on our skin and hair and that, which is not very good. But the concern also with chlorine, if people are showering in that water, chlorine, when you're showering in a confined, warm, moist environment, you're breathing in that chlorine, and that can be potentially not good for people that have got respiratory problems. Personally, I believe it's not doing the body a lot of help as far as our microbiome is concerned, but that's very much a personal opinion, and I think it's something that research should be looking at. So there are issues that need to be considered by people, and I think it's fair to say most of these they're going to have to deal with at the point of use.
Oh, I see.
Just on the subject of chlorination, some years ago, I was in business in Germany in a place about 50 miles north of Berlin, and I tasted the tap water, and it tasted very pleasant, and there was not a hint of chlorine in it. And I mentioned that to somebody there, and he says, yes. He says, we only add chlorine is only added to the public water supply in that area if we have a problem. Otherwise, it's not in there, which seemed to me a very sensible approach to it.
Yeah. I hear from what you say, there are so many things that can be creeping into our water supply. You mentioned the heavy metals, the pollutants, the environmental toxins, the chlorine.
Yeah.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, well, I would say 10 years ago, heavy metals would have been the main consideration for a lot of people. But since then, there's other considerations, particularly hormone residues and drug residues seeping into the water supply. And a lot of them they may pass through or through wastewater treatment plant, but there is no guarantee that they will all be totally broken down there. And so it is a concern, and it is particularly a concern with hormones. And that has been a concern for the last 20 years, the effect that hormones can have, residues can have on human health.
Yeah, something to think about. Now, what about the possible introduction of fluoride into the public water system? What are your thoughts?
Well, yes. I think it's to say chlorine is relatively easily removed from the water supply. Fluoride is a different matter altogether, and many of your filter systems will not remove fluoride. But the concerns for fluoride, and really, in my view, it is just mass medication. The impact it can have on a number of areas, particularly thyroid health, brain health, skeletal health, and particularly when there is so much underlying thyroid issues, I think it is rather concerning that what is being proposed. There was an interesting book which went into a lot of the research, and it maybe was published 20 years ago, called Fluoride by a guy, Barry Groves, and Barry Groves, Fluoride, and says drinking yourself to death. Maybe a bit extreme on the face of it, but when we look at it, I think for many people it could have a detrimental effect. And it is used in all of the Republic of Ireland has got fluoride added to the water supply. And in the UK, it's primarily in the West Midlands and the northeast of England, although there are some other works in the home counties and up in Lancashire that do have fluoride added. But the other aspect of the fluoride thing is that the argument is often used, well, we have fluoride in the environment as well. But the fact is that the fluoride that's naturally occurring in the environment is different chemically from what they're dosing into the treatment works. And that is something that people should be aware of.
Is there any benefit at all of adding fluoride to water? They must be doing it for a certain reason.
Well, the argument has been that it is there to improve dental health. Now, as far as I'm led to believe, that the research to support that is sketchy, to say the least. It's interesting to see that they're proposing to add fluoride to the water supply with its possible negative side effects, rather than reduce the consumption of sugar, which would not only help dental health, but would help overall well-being, but that doesn't seem to come into the equation. I understood that Germany at one stage used fluoride, but came to the conclusion that it was not even providing particular benefit for dental health, and they discontinued it. It is still used in the US. It is used in Spain, I think, is the only other European countries other than UK and Ireland, and it's used in Australia, but most other countries don't use it.
Yeah, it's good to hear that some of the countries are realizing that it's really not the way to go. And as you mentioned, we need to promote good dental hygiene and reducing sugar in the diet, because dental health is really important for overall health, as you say. And the answer is necessarily fluoridating our water, because there are detrimental effects that fluoride can have on the body. You mentioned thyroid health, brain health, etc. Now, what about bottled water? Somebody might ask you, as somebody that owns a company, Water for Health, is bottled water better for us? Not containing the fluoride or all those things that you mentioned, like the toxins, heavy metals and hormones.
Sure. I would say, as far as as you rightly said, it doesn't have the fluoride added, it won't have chlorine added, etc. But I think there's other issues that we need to consider as far as bottled water is concerned. Firstly, and not necessarily in this order, you look at the environmental impact of bottled water and the waste that goes with it. We are not far placed from probably the biggest bottled water company in the UK. And I mean, it's phenomenal amount of water that's being hauled around the roads in the UK on a daily basis. So there is a huge environmental impact on that. But what I think is important, I don't want to give the impression that cleanliness of the water is the panacea to all the problems. It's part of the solution. And there are many people in the industry believe that to give healthy water, it should just be getting rid of all contaminants. I see that as only being part of the equation of supplying the body with the type of water it needs to be properly hydrated.
Right. Okay. So you're making a distinction between it's not just clean water. It has to be water that is actually going to is actually going to have a function in the body to hydrate us well. And it seems to me that there's a sort of specific type of water you're
Yeah. Well, I think there are certain characteristics, I believe, that would define healthier water. But I think that we should look at the fact of water absorption. There are many people that drink copious amounts of water on a daily basis, and it is going in one end and out the other. It is not being absorbed in the body. There are a number of reasons for that, I believe, but one of them is a lack of mineral electrolytes in the body or in the water. We need electrolytes for the body to absorb water properly. So you've got that aspect, but more and more the research is moving round to looking at the structure of water and what that water can do to be not just to be absorbed, but to protect our very cells. And I think this is going to be a particularly fascinating and important area over the next decade or so.
We're going to be talking about the structure of water after a few messages from our commercial partners.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
You're listening to Dora Walsh on UK Health Radio on my weekly show, Nutrition for Health, Perfect Weight and Wellbeing. This week, we're talking about, is your water healthy? And I'm talking to Roddy MacDonald. He's the Managing Director of Water for Health. You can find out more about Water for Health on their amazing website, water-for-health.co.uk. You can also follow them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just type in Water for Health and you'll see everything that they're doing. Now, Roddy, you started talking about structured water and also water absorption and talking about how the cleanliness isn't the panacea really for us in terms of healthy water. It's really the water is absorbed, it's well structured, it needs to have the right electrolytes in order for us to be able to absorb the water properly. Tell us a bit more about that.
On the subject of water absorption, a few weeks ago, I was talking to somebody that was asked to speak to me because they were suffering with cellular dehydration. And the person says, I can't understand that because I'm drinking about 3.5 liters of water a day. And when we drilled down, we found out the type of water she was taking was actually reverse osmosis water, which had nothing in it. So there was no, and it was not being absorbed in the body. And that is a major concern. And I think it's a major concern also since many people have bought into the idea that salt is bad for them, when in fact the body needs a certain amount of good salt. And I think that's also very important. But going back to of looking at the structure of water and how this is absorbed, there's very many interesting things happening in that field. We have dealt a lot over the last 15 years with the Koreans, and a lot of their work was inspired by the Japanese, who have been working closely in this field for the 60 years or so. And the conclusion that they've come to, which a lot of the researchers in the West are coming around to as well, is that the ideal mixture of water is what they call hexagonal water, which is 6 water molecules all bound together. And they understand that type of water is best absorbed by the body, and that water will have an alkaline mineral there as part of the structure. The water molecules are bound around the alkaline mineral. And this is the type of water that you will find in fruit and vegetables naturally that are grown organically. So that type of water, I think, is important for health, properly structured. And water can be structured in many ways. But if you look back and say there's work done on the Rhine River in Germany. Now, where that water, the source of that water, the springs where the water comes up, is actually excellent quality water. It's got life to it. But yet, when it's downriver with all the pollution, etc., it's lost its structure, it's lost its life. The same water. And that is the effect of pollution and transportation. That water structure it can be structured in many ways. It can be using light can structure it. Magnetism to a certain extent can structure it. Vortexing can structure it. And certain types of minerals can structure it, or crystals. For instance, in many of our filter systems, we use something called bioceramics, which is compositions of natural minerals and crystals formed into little ceramic filter media. Now, some of that media does emit low levels of far infrared energy, which helps in the structuring of the water. So there's many ways it can be done to improve it. And when you're improving the structure, you're putting life back into the water. And that, I think, is an important thing, is water is not just there to meet your thirst. Water is there to give you life, to give you energy. As Dr. Batmanjuli wrote in his books, which his first was Your Body's Many Cries for Water, and his subsequent ones, he's saying the water is actually, we are hydroelectric systems, and water is to do with the transfer of electrons, and water is very, very important for that. It's part of our life process.
You mentioned that sometimes water loses its structure when it gets full of pollutants, etc. My question is, with normal water that hasn't been treated, is it well structured, or do we have to always do something to water in order to make it structured and healthy?
Well, I think the general consensus would be, as far as structure is concerned, the water that is in our taps or in bottled water does not have the ideal structure for the body.
So we need to do something about it. You defined a lot more about the kind of water that you would consider to meet the needs of the body. You say it needs to be structured, it needs to have minerals in there. Is there anything else that you can tell us about that in terms of what people can do to help themselves to make sure they get this water? Because you talked about vortexing, you talked about light, magnetism. What does that mean for the person on the street? Just wants to make sure they're getting the best water possible for their health.
Yeah, good question. And I think really now it's come to the stage, if people want to have as good a quality water as they can get, then they need to look at different point of use systems to clean the water, to give it good structure, and really to give it water that's going to help to promote their health. There is one other aspect that we haven't talked about, which is becoming more important as well, and that is over the last decade or so, the focus on the benefits of molecular hydrogen, that's H2, as an antioxidant. And healthy water can have molecular hydrogen in there through different point of view systems as well. And there is now, in the last decade, there is in excess of 1,000 peer-reviewed papers being published looking at the role of molecular hydrogen in the body. And a lot of these are actually from people drinking water which had molecular hydrogen content. And there is a very interesting website in the US maintained by a young scientist called molecularhydrogeninstitute.com. And that gives there in the research, all the research that's been carried out in the field of molecular hydrogen, which is something that people need to dig into, because H2, the hydrogen molecule, is a tiny molecule. It can penetrate into the body in areas where some of your larger antioxidants can't get them. And it is I believe, of profound importance. So going back to try and answer your question there, I believe that the good, healthy water should be as clean as possible of contaminants. It should have good structure with a mineral content. I believe it should have slightly alkaline pH, and it should have a molecular hydrogen content. No tap water or bottled water that I've tested has shown any molecular hydrogen content. And that's something that people can benefit from then by using systems at home.
You mentioned that this molecular hydrogen content is good as it can work as an antioxidant in the body. Is that correct?
That's it. What would appear to be its primary function. Yes.
Okay, great. And this is something that's come out in the last 10 years, you say?
Well, actually, it's been on the go longer than that, but the interest began to build in it, and there's been a lot of research carried out in the last 10 years. Again, a lot of that research has been carried out by the Japanese, Koreans, but more and more research in that area has been carried out in the US as well.
Now, Roddy, you work for Water for Health, your company, and I know you provide a number of different options to create healthier water. You have different filters, etc. Could somebody just have a normal filter on their side table, and would that help them to achieve the healthy water they want?
There are so many different filters on the market. Everything from different types of jug filters to under sink filters to whole house systems, etc. And there are many different permutations of them. For a while, that in terms of clean water, people were using whole house systems, reverse osmosis systems. Distillers were popular as well because of their ability to remove toxins. But I think that's important, but I really think that once that toxins are removed, then they need to look at other ways of revitalizing that water, which is possible. And now there are people promoting water saying if water has got a total dissolved solids concentration of any level, then that water has got toxins in it. Well, that is actually not totally correct. Yes, toxins will account for part of TDS, but you will get things like water hardness. And so your calcium and magnesium carbonates, etc., will account for TDS, and they might not be particularly pleasant in your water some cases, but they're not toxins. So it's something that people need to be aware of. Water that's got a mineral content will have a level of TDS in it, and that's necessary, in my view, for healthy water. Going back to you
about Water for Health, the company, and all of the options for making our water healthier, of the few messages from our commercial partners.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
You're listening to Dora Walsh on UK Health Radio on my show, Nutrition for Health, Perfect Weight and Wellbeing. This week, we're talking about how safe is your water supply. And we're speaking with Roddy MacDonald, Managing Director of Water for Health. You can find out more about them on their website, water-for-health.co.uk. You can also follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for all things healthy water and health. Now, obviously, our body is 70% water. It's so important to make sure that the water we drink supports our health. And that's what we've been talking about today, because there's a question mark over whether our water that we're getting is healthy. There is a concern about heavy metals and also about proposed fluoridation of water. And Roddy, we've been talking about a lot about the structure of water and how people really need to understand that it's not just enough to get clean water. That's great that we get clean water, but we need to make sure that it's structured in the right way with the right minerals in order for us to be able to absorb that water well. We talked a bit about the different ways of doing it. Tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. One course that might be for people is the work being carried on by Professor Gerald Pollack at the University of Washington, where he has done a lot of work on water structure. He's published his findings, and he is of the view that the water that is next to a surface, or in the case of the body, the water around our cells, is a different structure. In fact, he referred to it as a gel rather than between a liquid and a solid. And he has labeled that exclusion zone water. And his understanding is that the more of that structured water we have around ourselves, then the greater protection that is going to give for ourselves. And in fact, although we always think of water as being H2O, his understanding is that the water around in the exclusion zone is actually H3O2. So it's worthwhile, anybody, if they're particularly interested in the field, to look up Dr. Pollack's work, or if they want, they can buy his book, which is called The Fourth Phase of Water. It's a bit heavy going, but it might be useful for people if they've particularly got a bit of scientific knowledge on the subject. There are a huge lot of resources out there now from scientific and other areas. There is now the foundation, Hydration Foundation, also based out in Seattle in the US, that's looking to promote the benefits of drinking good water, and particularly the structured water. And of course, over the years, many people will know the work of Masaru Emoto, the Japanese scientist who did lots of work photographing water crystals, which were treated in a certain way, which gave a picture of the water under different circumstances, from different water supplies, and the effect of other things, including emotions on the water, which is very, very fascinating.
I love this, because water, we know it responds to vibration and feelings, etc.
Sure.
It's good to look at water on all different levels. You seem to be an expert on all the different levels of water in terms of how to maximize it for health.
Absolutely. It's interesting to note that the most beautiful crystal formation that Dr. Emoto photographed was water that had been subjected to the emotions of love and gratitude combined. Just think, the water inside us, what vibration is that water conveying? It's an interesting thought.
It's so important. I was speaking to you about this before, and it might sound a bit out there, but probably not for UK Health Radio listeners, that you can actually bless your water. You can talk to it. You can send it good thoughts. And in the past, this is why people used to pray over their food. And it actually does make it better. It will change but it is important to think about those molecules. They're going to be vibrating at a certain level, and you can actually make a big impact on them by what you
sure
do it.
Absolutely. We've got to realize that everything is energy, and we are energy systems. And in my view, the dis-ease is just dysfunction of the body at the energetic level, which is often manifested on the physical level. And I do think that where research is going to go over the next number of years or decades is looking more on at the energy side. Well, I would hope so, because that will give us a lot of the answers that we need if we're going to improve the health of the population. On the subject of that, there was another professor, Professor Rustam Roy, who's been dead a few years. He was a renowned material scientist professor. In fact, I think he had 5 professorships out there. And he wrote a paper on the structure of water, and he addressed the question, and I could quote what he said in the paper, which refers particularly to homeopathy, which is maybe of particular interest to the readers. He said, "This paper does not deal in any way with and has no bearing whatsoever on the clinical efficacy of any homeopathic remedy. However, it does definitively demolish the objection against homeopathy when such is based on the wholly incorrect claim that since there is no difference in composition between a remedy and pure water used, there can be no differences at all between them. We show the untenability of this claim against the central paradigm of material science, that it is structure, not composition, that largely controls properties, and structures can easily be changed in inorganic phases without any change of composition. The burden of proof on critics of homeopathy is to establish that the structure of the processed remedy is not different from the original solvent." And I think that's important for the critics of homeopathy to realize that the change is probably in the structure.
It's in the structure. Now, how with your water filters, obviously you're changing the structure of water. So I get, and you're using all different ways. What's the best way to do it? Because I know you, or should you use all of them? Because I know you mentioned forcing light, etc.
Well,
Red
yeah,
light. What is the best way to be able to change that structure?
I think it's hard really. It's hard really to define what is best, and everybody's circumstances are different as well. But I think under sink treatment systems give you healthy drinking water is a good place to start. We have our Energy Plus there, and that's proving quite popular because it's giving clean water. It's giving water which has got molecular hydrogen, good structure, and a high mineral content in there. But there are different ways, and we're actually in the point of bringing in new technology developed in the US, which is going to use different flow forms and minerals to, again, change the structure of water, and might be also a very good alternative, a natural alternative to people having to put softeners in their water, because it's going to change the water structure in such a way that the hardness will be less of a problem.
It's fantastic. And what kind of feedback are you getting from your clients, maybe that are trying the water in terms of taste and in terms of the impact of their health and also their hydration? Because you mentioned that a few of the people had dehydration issues despite drinking liters of water a day.
Sure, I think dehydration has been. I mean, we have been supplying products in this field now for 15 years, and we have healthy people that want to maintain their health, and we've had people that are very sick and with disease. And I keep stressing that I believe water should be the number one nutrient for the body, and we have had good feedback. In terms of taste is a very personal thing. We have our jug filters that we have sold, probably, I don't know, over the decade or so, 20,000 of them. And most people comment that the water tastes much better. Having said that, we've got 2 or 3 that said they didn't like the taste of the water. It's a very personal thing. But most people's comments, the water tastes better and it's got more life to it.
Yeah, and obviously this is going to have an impact on health. And it sounds like with your water systems, you're removing the toxins as well, not just structuring, but you're removing those heavy metals, you're removing the fluoride, the chloride, etc. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, in most of them now, and the under sink ones and the whole house ones are both removing fluoride as well as all the other contaminants.
That people can rest assured that if water is their primary number one nutrients, the most basic thing that we need,
sure,
that it's going to be the healthiest possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one point is to bear in mind is when a baby is born, the water content is probably over 80%. And now when people die, the water content in the body is probably down to 50%. We have shriveled up over the years. The example is often made that when we're born, our cells are like a plum, and when we die, they're like a prune. And it's very, very sad too when you look at people in old age and in nursing homes and so on. Sadly, they're suffering, many of them, for dehydration. They're not drinking water. It's such a nuisance to them. If they drink water, it's a bother. They're going to have to go to the toilet, etc. It's very sad that it's got to that extent, and it's affecting their quality of life. Because the brain is one of the organs that has the highest water content. And if the water content drops in the body, it's setting the scene for problems like your dementia type problems, etc. So it's important for people of all ages to keep well hydrated.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll be honest with you. When I speak to the older generation, my dad and my aunts, they don't drink water. They didn't drink much because it just wasn't a done thing. Even in the 80s when I was growing up, my mum was one of the first people on our road to start buying mineral water. She used to always carry a little bottle around, but no, not many people did it then. And now more and more people are drinking water.
Sure.
Historically, those older people, and not to generalize, they don't. I'm not talking about every single older person, but the ones I've been dealing with, they just don't. It's a hassle for them. So it's important to get that message.
Sure.
This actually, to revolutionize their health, their alertness, their well-being, avoid health issues going forward.
Yeah, and also for the younger generation, it is said, research is showing that extensive computer use is dehydrating on the body.
Yeah, and most of us on our computer all day. I am.
Yeah.
So, Roddy, it's been great to speak to you. I do
Thank you.
the show again. And listeners, I hope that you've enjoyed listening to the show as much as I have enjoyed presenting it. We've been speaking with Roddy MacDonald. He's the managing director of Water for Health. You can find out more about them on their website, water-for-health.co.uk. We've been talking about how safe is your drinking water, and we talked about what you need to do. So hopefully you've taken away a lot from the show. Thank you so much, Roddy.
Fine. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to people. I'm always happy to share, and if I can be of any help to anyone, I'm here for that purpose. Thank you.